The Mannin Line with Andy Wint.
Fast am I. Good afternoon. Welcome to Mannin Line on Manx Radio. Open line through to 1. Call 66 13 68. Text 166 177. WhatsApp on the same number. And email the studio at studio@manxradio.com. As I mentioned, we haven't had an open line since last Wednesday, crikey, because last Thursday it was Lamar Crane from the Green Party and Paul Burgess talking about sustainability and meeting our kind of green electricity needs. On Friday, it was Laurie Hooper, MHK, and the chief exec, the chief officer, Paul Richardson from DHSC. And yesterday, Scott Gallagher and Claire Barber from DEFRA talking about that. So anything that's reflecting on anything you heard on any of those shows, and also some of the other stories, that story about the 8 schools that were proposed to be closed, and the previous Education Minister said she would have closed them. That was Julie Edge. The current Education Minister says it's not a very good idea, but that's what the report said that the government commissioned and they got. So any thoughts on that? Ramsey didn't get its extension, its boundary extension. Laurie Hooper talked about assisted dying and the stress it would have on the staffing levels as well, and still no private ward, still no private facility at Nobles Hospital. Anyway, any of those, and of those 11 people jailed for supplying cocaine. It seems that the current chief constable has got the bit between his teeth, and Operation Nightjar is going full steam ahead. David's first with us now. Hi, David.
Hi, Randy. Just going around the Isle of Man, I took a little trip out with some people on Friday, and we did the same little trip on Monday around the island. Went to St. John's, Peel, stuff like that. And we looked at several places going past, and I've noticed a number of telephone boxes which are shabby looking. The one at St. John's could definitely do with a good paint, and the one at Port Jack really needs really looking at. And the bus shelters, I looked at one bus shelter at Port Jack there, near the Chippy, pays to advertise. Then I've emailed the photographs to the Department of DOI and the bus person himself and said to him, would you wait in this shelter? It's full of rust on the seats. The panels are all rusty. You can't even see out the windows. And I just don't know what we can do to these organisations who own these little bits and pieces and say to them, let's get the island tidy.
Well, two things. You're talking about telephone boxes, and funny you should say that, because I went to, on Saturday, I went to that exhibition at Jerby Church, the RAF exhibition, and drove around and spotted, now, bearing in mind, it is a rural area, but some really tatty phone boxes. And I don't know, is it Manx Telecom that owns the phone boxes, or, I mean, who would own those phone boxes?
Yeah, well, Manx Telecom will be the first point of contact.
Right. Well, because my point is, if they can't afford the paint to paint them, will they allow us to paint them?
Others. Yeah.
Well, the thing is, if they'll, we'll buy the paint. Just tell us what sort of paint it's got to be, whether it's got to be that post office box red. And what about the two knackered old things that are next to Marks and Spencer? Tens of thousands of people walk by those, and they look shabby. They look like Doctor Who just should be in them.
Yeah. The other thing, and one of the major things too, is when you've got an area that starts to look shabby, it seems to grow more shabby, and then we've got other areas going around the Isle of Man. It shocked me how many people are leaving grass verges, hedges. You can't see signs on the road to tell you which way to go. where you're on the road to St. John's and stuff like that.
And that's what makes me, it sort of concerns me. Is this local authorities? I can't think it's going to be private owners, because most people know what spring and summer mean, and they're proud of their frontages, and people will trim them and get them looking nice. But is this local authorities, or is it DOI?
It's a combination of both before anybody comes on to me. And if they got any issues, please feel free to email in and tell us where they are, and we can address them. Especially what I consider in Oaken there too. We've got some places where I think are quite shabby, but it would be a combination of the community and the local authority and the DOI getting together.
You see, I just wonder whether it's, and I'm not pointing fingers, but if we have new civil servants and new people have come to the Isle of Man who are in the civil service, maybe they think that's how it always was, but it wasn't. It used to be prim and proper and spick and span and newly painted.
Yes. And then there's a lot of them too there, like the one opposite Mocrease. I'm surprised Mocrease Motors there haven't complained about that. It's opposite the NSC there, the main entrance used to go in there too. There are 3 or 4 big vehicles there. The weeds are growing all through them. It just looks terrible. And it must be owned by the Highway Division. And I've asked the 85,000 number to come back to me and say, well, who does own it? If it's somebody else that's owned it, maybe we contact them. And it's near the Kirby Estate, which looks pretty. Do you know what I mean? We were out at Ballamota Strait there because I forgot there was a road junction that was closed near Glen May, and we went on the Ballamota Strait. The only criticism I had was there, some of the junctions, when you come out on the sides there, need to be trimmed when people are trying to poke their cars out. And it's a main road going through, and they may be a little bit hairy now and again. But I just wonder whether people would come on. Maybe we should have a Mannin Line grot spot.
Right.
There are definitely 2 grot spots on my list, and one is in Governor's Road, Onken, the bus shelter, which is concrete, covered in ivy, flooded with water, graffiti inside, and the other one is down Royal Avenue on the corner. Both reported to the DOI and through the bus thing. And you might as well talk to the boat that's coming in now, with all them visitors coming to the Isle of Man.
All right.
What do they think?
Well,
cheers.
Good to hear from you. Thanks for that. I just wonder what your thoughts are regarding that. It's been mentioned many, many times, but bearing in mind, the Isle of Man did used to have municipal flower beds that were gorgeous. Now, some still are. Some are still lovely. However, this is summertime. This is when grass needs to be cut. It's when borders need to be trimmed. It's when weeds need to be weeded. And really, as David mentioned, we've got a big boat in the bay. I think it's now called the Vasco da Gama. It used to be the Staten Dam. It's owned by somebody else now, but the Vasco da Gama, 2,000 people on board. Now, we're probably a lot better than most places that they go to, but we used to be an awful lot better. Lots of messages coming in, and lots of messages were across the weekend, which I'll get to, particularly about dilapidated properties. But let's get to Patrick with us now. Hi, Patrick.
Hi, David. David, I just wondering about the laws in the Isle of Man. If we're getting fly tippers and we're getting people dumping television and all sorts, which you have to pay for at the tip, why don't we increase the fines dramatically so we can make an example of these people?
How much do you think the fine should be, Patrick?
Well, I don't know is there a set limit to the fines we can give them? Because to me, the Isle of Man, we're a government now. If it needs to bring laws in to stop this now, nip it in the bud sort of thing, they've got to do it because they'll be dumping stuff everywhere, and also the vandalism will be right as well. So there's 2 things in one there, really, vandalism and tipping. I think the fine should be, increased by a lot. Otherwise, you end up the Isle of Man will be a mess again.
I mean, but there's something else as well, Patrick. Do you think we should be introducing things like, community work? That happens elsewhere. So if somebody's nicked, if somebody's nicked for fly tipping, they have to spend, 50 hours cleaning up.
No, it's too costly. You've got to supervise them and all that. It's bad enough as it is at the moment. Look at the jails and they're getting overcrowded now. And the Isle of Man will be the same. No, just make sure they pay these fines. In other words, if they say, we can't afford to pay £1,000 fine, well, take their door money off them or take whatever it is. And if it's a firm that's tipping this stuff, you should maybe put them in jail, the leaders of the firm, put them in jail maybe. Make an example of these people, because to me, the fellow commented this morning about using their bins for the television or whatever it was, it's disgraceful, absolutely disgraceful. So I hope there's government people listening in and they do something about this now, put a bill forward. Or I don't know how it works as far as fines are concerned. I don't know what the law is.
All right, well, we'll try and find out what the fine is for fly tipping, Patrick, but we appreciate that. Thanks for calling today.
Bye now. Bye-bye.
All right, 17 minutes past 12. So what do you think about? Well, Patrick raised fly tipping and vandalism. Two different things, but really two branches of the same tree. The people who vandalise things, who break municipal architecture, break seats, paint all over things, do what they call graffiti, really, scribbling, if you be. What do you think we should do about that? Do you make that punitive? Do you say that if somebody gets caught fly tipping or vandalising, you hit them with a big fine? I'll just mention two things to you. Dog mess and disabled parking spaces. Could you tell me the last time you heard anybody getting a punitive fine for not picking up dog mess or parking in a disabled parking space? Now, the fine for parking in a disabled parking space is big. I don't know when was the last time you saw. So if we can't police simple things like that, if that's just supposed to be a deterrent, well, it only deters the people who wouldn't do it anyway. The people who are antisocial will do it anyway. They couldn't care less. They're the sort of people who don't pick up dog muck or who do fly tip or who do vandalise things. The people who throw cigarette butts out of car windows. The people who park on Saturday. I happened to be in the Tesco car park in Lake Road and saw an affluent-looking gentleman in a champagne-coloured open-top Mercedes who blithely parked in the mother and toddler bay, and he was on his own, just because he could. How do you approach people like that? Did I say anything to him? Of course I didn't. I'm a coward. I would want... You never know what he might do. Juan's with us now. Hi, Juan.
Oh, you can't be a coward after Thursday's show, Andy. Hey, you've had some good shows the last couple of days, haven't you?
Well, we try and get to the bottom of things.
Yes, you do. I see. You must have had a bit of climate change in the studio on Thursday, because I believe Lamara stormed out.
No. I have to say, hats off to Lamara Crane. First of all, she wasn't very well. And that wasn't because she'd gone to see Take That in Manchester, but Lamara wasn't well, so she didn't want to hang. She was. We don't know whether it was the dreaded flirt or whatever it was, but no, I enjoyed Lamara's. First of all, Lamara sticks to what she believes in, and she's great fun. I like Lamara. Yeah,
well, when you say Lamara wasn't well, she wasn't well spoken either. Let's look at some of the comments on underneath the thread. Set the Green Party back a decade. Comedy gold. Mr. Burgess and misinformation. Now, there's a few of the comments for you. And then the personal attack, which we thought would be coming anyway with the connection with the Tommy Robinson. Not very well spoken. She sticks by her guns and says her piece, but when you start calling people climate deniers after climate denier after climate denier, and then tagged on the anti-vaxxers afterwards, and this is someone who's obviously got aspirations of being an MHK by the looks of what she's spurting around at Ramsey, I think you have to be careful with your dialogue when you're coming on these programmes. the venom that went out to Paul Burgess before he came over was quite interesting. I think the putting Lamar and Paul on together, I think, was a genius move, Andy, if it was yours. But I'm looking at the venom that's put out to someone who has not really got a dog in the race. He's 79 years old, and his whole thing is climatology. But I'm looking at some of the feedback from people over before he came, and I'm looking at their dogs in the race, like a solar panel salesman, a media manager for Ørsted, director of Nedbank, who's massively ESG and sustainability. So all these people that are really venomous to someone, it's quite interesting when you look down the rabbit hole. And,
you see, Joan, all I wanted to do was, and that we said it right at the top, at the moment we pay 29p per kilowatt hour. What's it going to cost in the future? And I think that's where most people get onto the roundabout. How much is this going to cost? Now, whether you're for it, against it, you sit on the middle, you're on the fence, wherever you are, we all have to pay an electricity bill. All I want to know is, how much is it going to cost?
Absolutely, I totally agree with you, Andy, and that's where the transparency needs to come in, because like we said before, if we get this wrong, we've not got a lot of money left to fix it. Now, there's an interesting question, as you've mentioned, that's been brought up this morning by Jason Morehouse, a little bit of word salad, so I've got to look into that, and also John and Munberg's reply. But this is about the figures, and if this is true, then the Wardall-Armstrong figures are very, very distorted, which is basically what Julian's been saying for a long time now. And that's the figures between capacity and load. Now, I'm not going to go into it to any depth because this has just been put on as the question's been put on the floor this morning. But there seems to be a big discrepancy between capacity and load in the figures that's being produced by the MUA, by Manx Utilities from Wardell-Armstrong. So somewhere along the line, something is not knitting right. And that's all that's being said right the way along the line here, that if this is not right, then the only people that's going to pick the bill up for this is not the Manx government, it's going to be the people of the Isle of Man. And back to what you've just said, absolutely, totally agree. And that's all people are saying. We have to be very careful that we're not getting led down the garden path, because these people are in it to make money, purely money, not for the benefit of us. They're purely here to make money.
Well, I think, we can safely say the Green Party is not in it to make money. That's a political side to it. But anybody who's in the industry of it, by definition, is going to be there to return. There's got to be a return on their investment. They're there for the shareholders.
Absolutely, but then at the detriment of the Manx people. Now, just on that note there, before it goes out of my mind, you say people are not in it for the money. I'd also like to know the Manx Wildlife Fund, why they're not shouting about what's going to happen at Erie Staying. Now, is that because of the donation that's been given to them, if we're going to talk about following money trails here?
Well,
because they're suspiciously quiet about anything that's happening at the Erie Staying. Now, again, people haven't got the time to drill down into this. They go out to work in the morning, they come home, they want to switch the TV on. Like you said, they want some electricity, they want their lights on. They haven't got the time to drill down into it. There is people that are drilling down into it, and all it is making sure that we get this right for the Isle of Man. I absolutely agree.
Well, earlier on today, you may have heard Mr. Wannenberg saying that they don't quite know how much the wind turbine's going to be, and it might be nice to know from them. And I'll be honest with you, I don't care. As long as we get electricity and it's of a reasonable price, then that's what's going to happen. But we don't know how many wind turbines there are going to be. Is it 1, 2, 5, 10? We don't know. We don't know how much is it going to cost. Each wind turbine is going to cost 10 million, 15, 20, 40, 90. At the moment, there is no ballpark figure to say if we have 3 turbines, it's going to cost 70 million. If we're going to have 5, it's going to be this. You buy one, you get one free. We don't know. There's not even any ballpark figures to then do some calculations backward to see what's going to be the debt to MU, to Manx Utilities.
And this is the point. At least we had a ballpark figure with the Liverpool landing stage. That was 25 to start with. So if it goes by any ballpark figure there, we're going to be up to 3 times the cost anyway. Yeah. Well, the question here is, like I've just said with these figures, which needs to be drilled down into, and I'm sure someone will come on whether they've got the figures mixed up here intentionally or by mistake, capacity to load. It's very, very important, Andy, to the future of the electricity and, like you've just said, the price that we're all going to pay.
Okay.
I think it's just bad when there's so much venom to someone like Paul Burgess, who basically got on the plane here, drove to London, was on GB News Live the next day. This guy is no fool. No matter what you think about him, and respect to Paul Crane for turning up at the meeting, and like I said yesterday, we've elected 24 MHKs to represent us, and not one of them, except for Stu Peters, came to that meeting to hear the other side of the story.
Okay, all right, thanks, Stuart. Good to hear from you.
Take care, Andy.
27 minutes past 12. Mary Ann dropped a note in just to say there's been a dispute online between Tesco customers and residents of Summerhill Village next to Tesco on Victoria Road, the old ShopRite. A number of customers have contacted Tesco's head office for Tesco to introduce 2-hour parking limits to prevent residents and nearby office people taking advantage of Tesco's free parking facilities. There was a post on Facebook where a Tesco customer was complaining of a resident of Summerhill Village using the car park for illegal car modifications, and another resident defended the driver, saying residents always park in the child and parent space at the side of the store, which led to further disputes, saying the parking should be for customers only and not residents, and Tesco should introduce 2-hour disc zone and issue fines to those exceeding the limit. Tesco head office have been contacted by customers, says Mary Ann, and gives us the email for head office. If you're interested, it's ken.murphy@tesco.com. Well, Mary Ann, I don't know what the answer is, because I don't know who owns that car park, whether or not, and I'm presuming, I think the deal was that Tesco have leased those facilities. They've leased they've got a leasehold on the properties that used to be ShopRite, so I'm presuming that the freehold is owned by, I think it's Isle of Man Enterprises, the ShopRite parent company, so presumably that's not a Tesco car park, unless I'm misinformed. And remember, we had the situation with the Lake Road Tesco, whereby that's owned by a UK parking company, and theoretically anybody can park there. So I don't know what the answer is. I think you're referring to the Summerhill Village as the Tesco, the ShopRite chalets, isn't it? The old holiday chalets by the petrol station there. But it would be interesting to know what that situation is. And certainly opposite that Tesco stroke ShopRite car park is that enormous business park, which is always jam full because of the amount of people who work there. But we'll follow that and see what happens. Mary Ann, thanks for raising that with us. We need to keep the phone boxes, says Fran. And what to do with them, Fran? Do we paint them, or what do we do? Do we treat them as heritage objects, I wonder? An ambulance was called last night at 10 to 6 for an 84-year-old gentleman who's fallen in his own home. Advised the ambulance will be 90 minutes. This was 10 to 6. By 20 past 8, the ambulance hadn't turned up, so we cancelled it and tried to deal with the situation as best we could, unable to get the gentleman into a car. This really isn't an acceptable way to treat our ageing populations. Text to 142. We've contacted the Health Minister. Well, send us more details. Text to 142. It will be interesting to know. Text to 384. Andy says, how can we never mention the empty nursing home costing the Manx public £50,000 a month? Is this Summerhill Views? £50,000 a month? Andy, what's the calculation? 384. Just tell me where the £50,000 a month comes from. It's time for the government to step in and sort the scene packet out. The prices are unreal, says 470. Which bit are their prices? 470. Oh, today's the day, remember. We're off to Liverpool with that brand new bit sticking out of Mannin. They've had to put a big bracket on the side. It looks something special because apparently Mannin, well, at low tide, get this, at low tide, at Princess Half Tide Dock at low tide, people couldn't have got off. So they had to bolt an extra bit on to take a look. The cruise ship isn't the Vasco da Gama. The Staten Dam that's now Vasco da Gama is different to this. It's the new Staten Dam, says Jeff Kay. I'm glad you're paying attention, Jeff, and I appreciate it. Sue's with us now. Hi, Sue.
Hi, Andy. How are you?
Very well, thanks. What's on your mind?
I heard, was it Julian just discussing the wind turbines earlier? So I thought, while we're on the subject of the ever grumbling on green issue, I would ring yourselves and discuss a little idea that I've come up with. It might be in my wonderful little world that this would happen, but it's worth getting out there.
Yeah. I
am currently in the process of having solar panels installed on my house. And the 8-panel system, which is adequate enough to generate all the electricity that my family needs for, especially over the summer months, and to give us reduced bills over other months during the year, costing around about £7,000. Now, we've applied for and have been told that we can have a little bit of the Green Living Grant to go towards this to help us install it. But I was thinking, although it's lovely of the government to offer us money towards installations such as this and other improvements to our houses, why don't they start offering to put free systems like this in to people who are struggling, the people who are having to choose between heat and eat? If they found appropriate accommodation where people in that sort of situation are living and were able to install solar panels, then they would give those families a little bit of respite, especially over the summer months where they would have reduced or virtually zero usage of MUA electricity because it would be generating its own electricity.
Who'd decide who got them, Sue?
Who decides?
Yeah, who do you think should decide who would get them?
Well, that would be something that would be on record through the government, wouldn't it? Because they would know who's getting benefits. They probably even have information about people who are using the food banks.
Right.
They know who are on low incomes. They know who are getting things like child benefits and things like that. So they probably have all of that information already as to who is really struggling, who's getting what benefits. I mean, people who have adequate income don't need benefits. So in my mind, in my little world, that means that people who are drawing on benefits probably are struggling and are on the lower income and don't have enough to support themselves. So I would say that the government would already have that sort of information and have knowledge, especially through charities like the food banks. That information is out there already and the government probably has that sort of information. But I mean, if they installed a simple system like we're having for £7,000 on a property where people in that sort of situation are living, then when the system is up and running and generating excess electricity that family is not going to use, that excess electricity is then fed back into the electricity system, the grid, and that excess energy also produces an income. So the government would get an income. Now, I think it's something really low, like 9p a unit at the moment, but that's 9p a unit more than they're getting at the moment by handing people like myself part of a Green Living Grant that they're not asking for money back on.
So,
yes,
Sue, when did you come up with this idea?
What about the solar panels or about the Green Living Grant?
Oh no, about the solar panels for people on low income or benefits.
Well, it sort of manifested itself over time with us getting the solar panels installed in our property. And then you hear and see in the media and in the news and everything about people who are struggling, about people having to use food banks and everything like that. And I just thought, well, surely if not the government, but some other organisation gets together and generates enough funding to have some of these panels installed on some of the properties, then it would help families who are struggling. I mean, I know that not all properties can have it done. Some are in too much shade, some the roofs point the wrong way, some are flat roofs, and that would need extra engineering to find out whether the flat roof can support framework. Some framework can be put in gardens if you have a garden. So it's not going to be a one pony fits all. It's not going to be one of those. But Lamara Crane and Paul Burgess, although most of the programme that they spent on Thursday was them trying to have a go at each other, the one thing that they did actually agree on was that the wind turbines will not generate 100% electricity that the island needs. So if the government did take on a project like the one that I'm saying about and install solar panels on appropriate properties for struggling families, then that would reduce the need for electricity generation by the wind turbines. So it wouldn't matter then if the wind turbines did only produce 25% usage or 50% or 75%, whatever amount the wind turbines are producing, that could be reduced because then the government could then be installing solar panels on other properties and helping struggling families, having an income for themselves. And on top of that, if they gave, which would be the moral thing to do, if they gave contracts for that sort of thing to companies that are island-based, then that would support the local economy.
OK, all right. Sue, we appreciate that. Nice thought. Thanks for calling.
OK, thank you.
All right, 22 minutes before 1 it is on Manx. I've just been clued in, by the way. The ship is not the old Staten Dam, which is now the Vasco da Gama. This is the new Staten Dam, which is Holland America, which is part of Carnival Corporation. So it's the new Staten Dam. So hi to everybody who's coming to the Isle of Man from the new Staten Dam, being ferried off, bouncing across the bay. Apparently, incidentally, if you're interested, do you remember our wonderful sea cats? Do you remember those famous wave-piercing super sea cats that we had, the white ones? They looked tremendous, didn't they? Always had Italian captains because they were built by Fincantieri. Well, apparently, this new Staten Dam, the cruise ship in the bay, was built in the same shipyard.
Have you visited Talbot & Sons' new home yet? After more than 30 years in Derby Square, we've moved to Snugborough Trading Estate with stunning new blind and curtain displays, inspiring ideas and the latest technology for your home, along with the same friendly family-run service and expertise you know and love. Visit talbots.im to find out more and come and see us soon.
We interrupt this broadcast to inform all our listeners about the huge range of bathrooms and showers on display at Pacesetter. Yes, you all know that Pacesetter is known as the island's largest tile store, but I'm here to tell you that their bathroom displays are truly inspirational. Visit Pacesetter on Harris Terrace, where you'll discover a fabulous collection of stylish bathrooms. There's something to suit everyone, with design available. Pacesetter bathrooms and showers to show off about.
The race is on to help local charity Arlo's Adventure, and you can help win it. It's the KPMG Promenade Relay, Friday 12th of July along Douglas Seafront, with 100% of entry fees and sponsorship going to Arlo's Adventure, helping Manx residents needing hospital treatment in the UK and supporting bereaved families through child or pregnancy loss. Get your relay team of 2, 3 or 4 people together to tackle the 10k course, or go it alone over 5k. Entries close 10th July. Visit kpmg.com/CDS for details and registration. The KPMG Promenade Relay, supported by your nation station, Manx Radio.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is a passenger announcement. From Saturday the 6th of July, the Carnaby Street time train will be departing from 8 a.m. for a 2-hour journey to the 1960s with the Isle of Man Railways, with hits, memories and great prizes. Carnaby Street at the new time of 8 a.m. Listen again to Manx Radio from July the 1st.
The Mannin Line with Andy Wint.
19 minutes before 1. Wilf's on now. Hi, Wilf.
Hi, Andy. It's just a couple of things that you asked me about last week.
Yeah.
The kids in Ramsey have got their new raft at last. But it's the same, I believe, as the one at Port Erin. But there is a problem with it. They can't get on it.
Why?
It's too slippery. There's nothing to get hold of. So I haven't seen the one down at Port End, so I don't know how they get on that. Maybe they got to sit on it when the tide is out and wait for the tide to come in. I don't know, but I have suggested in the town hall to maybe something like a cargo net or something tied over top of it, so you can get hold of it to pull yourself up on it.
I'm trying to remember, didn't the one at Laxey, didn't that used to have little steps that you could climb up on the side? I'm sure.
Yes, but this thing is only about, I don't know what, 2 foot off the floor or something. So a ladder on it, I don't know how that would work, because that would hit the deck, you see, as the tide went out, and how it works, I don't know. But, and is there anything strong enough on it to fasten a ladder to? I don't know. So it's just something for them to get hold of. But they'll have to think about that. But, of course, in the town hall, they're not very bright anyway. But anyway, that's just my idea of it. But, no, what was the other thing? I had something else to tell you. I did get, the telephone people did come good. And they put extra thing on my phone.
Oh, you got your credit back?
Yeah, I got my credit, but it's... they didn't give me 20 quid. They just gave me 20 quid in credit, which I didn't really want because I went somewhere else and got another ticket which I could read. So I ended up with 40 quids with it, and the phone was twice as big. Anyway, now what else was... Oh, yes. Yeah. Well, I thought it was amusing. A good friend of mine, clever man, and he said, I'm tired of hearing on the radio about this assisted dying, he said. He said, it's already been passed. It's been passed for quite a while. I said, oh, what do you mean it's passed? He said, well, we can't get a dentist, we can't get a doctor, we can't get in the hospital, we can't get anything done, he said. Wouldn't the government call that assisted dying already? I thought it was amusing.
Well, anyway. Yes, I can see why you do think it's amusing, Wilf. All right. Thanks for calling today.
Okay, all right.
Good to hear from you. If you got any thoughts, then by all means do get in. Somebody just said, Ramsey Commissioners trying to make it like it's a knockout. So they have that thing that you just can't get onto in the middle of the sea. Anyway, if the raft is working, do tell me. Tim dropped a note into me. We've been to Nordic countries visiting friends and were told while we were there travelling around some countries that they've banned electric vehicles from ferries. Today we had a message from a friend in Scotland about a fire near him in Glasgow that involved 6 electric cars and took the fire service 8 hours to get under control. 6 electric vehicles in Glasgow. I'm just wondering what opinion the steam packet has of electric vehicles. When we've travelled on the boats here, they don't seem to put any electric cars where they can be pushed over the side, for instance. They just seem to be packed in amongst the others, the internal combustion ones, with petrol in them and diesel. So we asked the steam packet what they thought of this, and they just said, from their spokesman, safety is always, this is the steam packet, safety is always the number one priority of the Isle of Man Steam Packet Company. The company is fully compliant with all current local and international regulations for the prevention, detection, containment and extinguishing of fires on its vessels. Voluntarily, the steam packets introduce policies and procedures in excess of the requirements in a number of areas and continually reviews its own and industry best practice to ensure the safety of its customers, crew and vessels. Get it? Got it? Good. No, me neither. Here's a message in that also said regarding dilapidated properties. it was great to hear that Alex Allinson and the government finally doing something about dilapidated houses, which aren't just empty, but ones which people living in them, we've got people living in them who can afford to repair them, but just don't, or at least don't even clear up the rubbish piled high in front. They are eyesores and on every street and are well known to everybody, but the new legislation can't be just palmed off with the commissioners to deal with them. People don't realise commissioners in government health and safety have got the power to deal with these houses for decades, but they don't because of the cost in prosecuting, because often the people who are in the houses have got big and deep pockets and will take on the government. Hopefully, the new legislation will be done by DOI or DEFRA, not commissioners, as nothing will happen as it's left to them. Interestingly, I had also a note in from somebody who knows all about Belgium and talking about dilapidated properties. And he said in Belgium, they have a system whereby if a property is left unoccupied, untendered, or it becomes dilapidated, then the authority imposes punitive rates on the owner, i.e. use it or lose it. 25 euros per metre of the property, the frontage that is, 25 euros per metre per storey. So if you imagine a 10-metre property, 30 foot or so, that's 250 euros per month, per storey. 3 stories, 750 euros. Hence, the owner has to do something with it. If it goes to planning, then the punitive rates stop, and something has to be built. Otherwise, it has to be sold, or the person has to swallow those punitive rate charges. And this correspondent says it can be done, it can be enforced, so why don't we do it here?
The sale is now on at the Snug in Ramsey. Huge discounts of up to 50% on selected wood-burning and multi-fuel stoves, beams, electric fires and tiles. When they're gone, they're gone. Call into our Snug showroom in Parliament Street, Ramsey now. This old house needed new windows. This old house needed a new door. And with DPM Conservatories, we got all that and more. Now our bills are lower and the house is warmer too. We're cleaner and we're greener since we swapped our old for new. Stunning A+ rated replacement windows and doors, expertly fitted by DPM Conservatories. Phone 612 333 or find them on Facebook and swap your old for new.
Achieve your business goals with Nicola Bowker & Co. Embracing the latest accounting technology, Nicola Bowker will help you to keep your accounts totally up to date with all the information you need at the tip of your fingers. Don't be kept in the dark. Come into the light with Nicola Bowker.
I began to struggle with the stairs, but I didn't want to leave our family home. So my daughter told me about Acorn Stair Lifts and their new showroom in Douglas. I was able to try the stair lifts and find the right one for me and the home I love. They were so friendly. The whole process was hassle-free and they offered the whole package from installation to servicing. Choose the island's first choice for stair lifts. Acorn Stair Lifts, South Quay, Douglas.
Call Acorn Stair Lifts now on 672 414 or call into our Douglas showroom.
This evening, in the second of a series of programmes revisiting the Manx radio years, an industry that came and went but brought glamour and some really big names with it. Films in Man this evening from 6. Available as a podcast afterwards at manxradio.com.
The Mannin Line with Andy Wint.
Here's a WhatsApp in from 815 and just said, I found the debate around the wind turbines very interesting. I work in manufacturing in a fair-sized factory and love big engineering, new and old. I've become very interested in the power sector and watched the green transition pan out worldwide. But my biggest concern is that not enough is understood about how much electricity modern society requires and how critical and delicate the power grid is. We always hear about how many homes green technology can power, but the average home doesn't use much. How about the electricity needed to run a factory of massive lathes and milling machines, or how much electricity a hospital needs to power large electromagnets, say in an MRI machine, even in the digital sectors? People will be very surprised about how much electricity it takes to run a server farm to power all the AI and Zoom calls that modern business depends on. Green technology has its place as a boost to the grid, but we need to think very carefully when messing with it until we are sure that it will work and it will be affordable. There's so much to discuss, too much for a text, but thanks for getting in touch anyway. We really appreciate that opinion and glad you enjoyed the show. Parking on pavement, straddling double yellow lines and speeding, and that's just Williston. There is no policing here. Hasn't been for years, says Tam. Well, the police station went, didn't it, Tam? People are fly-tipping, says WhatsApp at 270. TVs, especially when buying a TV, you would register for the warranty, so in theory, the purchaser is traceable from the serial number. If the authorities were really bothered about it, they could find the culprits and make examples of them, like I said, if they could be bothered. Well, that's a really good point. If it's registered for a warranty, there'll be a serial number on the television, and the insurance company will know, wouldn't they? We still have no idea, and I'm not putting ideas in anybody's head, but the hotspot for tipping televisions used to be the Port Sodrick end of Marine Drive. The authorities know it. And it's not like anybody apart from the seagulls are going to be complaining about a 65-inch television landing in their nest. But it happens, and quite what we do about it, if, as the caller earlier said, if you've got to make it exemplary, there has to be an exemplary punishment for this, or just say, well, bring your telly free then to the tip and we'll absorb the cost and just put the rates up. Won't the Liverpool dock be a huge loss as it won't be used during the winter months, or am I missing something, says Dodsey. The steam packet transports an electric van to Heysham, says Pablo, regarding electric vehicles. I noticed yesterday, says Keith, they've started that horrible wall along the promenade from the War Memorial. I thought the planning permission had lapsed on that. They're not responsible, this is the steam packet, in their terms and conditions, says Pat, they're not responsible for any damage caused to vehicles on board. I would have thought an electric vehicle would damage the ship as well, but just saying. There's no problem climbing on the 3 expensive plastic bathing rafts at Port Arun. They're not in the water. They're stacked on the promenade. Clearly, summer hasn't yet officially arrived in Port Arun, says John. Oh, please, John, send us a photo, would you?
This is Zoe Gillings-Breyer, Manx Olympic snowboard athlete. I wanted to wish Manx Radio a very happy 60th birthday.
Here's a message from Charles. Just says, hi, and I heard recently Scotland generates more electricity than it needs, what with all the wind turbines and the hydroelectricity. So perhaps the Isle of Man could have another interconnector to Scotland and buy power from them. After all, we're closer to Scotland in distance than England, says Andy. Do you remember when the people were on from Manx Utilities and Wardell Armstrong, they were talking about the other interconnector that's going to happen, whether or not it's the Ørsted wind farm that they're talking about, the offshore wind farm, which of course is going to link back to the UK because they blow our circuits if they plugged into us. So presumably there is going to be another interconnector where nobody quite knows. Kieran dropped me a note in just to say, Andy, I was absolutely delighted to hear Percy Radcliffe on Manx, the late Percy Radcliffe, the Manx politician, talking. And we do enjoy those Manx Radio archive, the museum pieces. Really like to hearing John Betjeman talking about the Isle of Man. Next week, by the way, we're talking about tourism, or what we used to call tourism. On Tuesday, the 2nd, next Tuesday, Deborah Heather will be on, and Sarah Maltby, MHK. Deborah is the chief exec. Sarah Maltby, MHK, is the political member for Visit Isle of Man. Now remember, Visit Isle of Man is part of the Department for Enterprise. There are other departments, Digital Isle of Man, Locate Isle of Man, but it's what used to be called the Department for Tourism, the Minister of Tourism, the Minister of Fun and all that. So that's all been, if you like, shrunk to fit inside the Enterprise Ministry. So it'll be interesting. If you've got any thoughts on TT and how you thought they handled TT, because motorsport is part of the Department for Enterprise. So we'll see how that goes. Excellent idea regarding solar panels, but I just wonder where the caller thinks the government's going to get the funds to do this, because she's only receiving a percentage of the cost, whereas the government would need to foot the whole bill for people on low incomes. Says this is Moira. Thank you for that, Moira. We still really don't have any figures or locations from the government as to where there are solar panels on government buildings. I mean, the government's got dozens, hundreds of buildings. It'd be nice to know how much solar panel coverage there is, and consequently how much electricity they're putting back into the system, albeit, as those who said, it's only about 9p per unit, whereas you have to pay 29p to take it off. But the ministers and chief execs should visit all areas of their department to see how they operate and actually talk to the staff doing the work. There are savings to be made, says Andrea, apart from removing a layer of management. If they really knew what their departments do, all chief execs and chief executive officers come in and they have very little idea of island life, and they seem to make little or no attempt to find out, says Andrea. So, what's being put in place, says this correspondent, this is Pammy on 505, what's being put in place to prevent wind turbine manufacturers charging us millions a year for maintenance? We literally have no options, but we have to pay up once they're turned on. This could cripple the Isle of Man. Heed the warning, says Pam. Just another piece of information that would be nice to know if we are to have wind turbines. Again, how many are there going to be? If they're going to be in Erie Stane, then it would be nice to see a mock-up, one of those fly-throughs that the whiz kids on computers can compose. How many wind turbines? How much is it going to cost? How much are they going to generate? And what is the maintenance cost? I got a message in from Anon. Sat on an EasyJet flight at Liverpool Airport last week. Just told we have to sit on the plane for 3 hours because Ronald's Way is closed. I heard it became bottom of a league table, says Anon. I agree. Oh dear. Right, back with another open line tomorrow. Enjoy the rest of your Tuesday. Chris Quirk is on next.